forest regions and epidemics epicenters. International organizations carry out their activities in parts of the world where they are critical for people. They unite countries and continents, save millions of lives and solve global problems. Watch more on this in Kazakhstan International Vectors. Alternative energy sources are to replace fossil fuels. While producing energy, solar batteries neither emit greenhouse gases nor the other harmful substances. Easy and cost-effective, water energy guarantees ecological safety. Each country has its own national priorities. World population is growing by leaps and bounds. Statistically, one marriage is concluded each 10 minutes and the number of houses increases along with new families. A private house nowadays is a dream of everyone. However, few people think about materials used during the construction. Vladimir Deryankin has been erecting ecologically safe houses for several decades. He began his career as a high rigger. We adopted the experience of ecological house building from Russia. We have been constructing block houses and bath houses in Kazakhstan for several decades. We also erect ecological panel houses according to the Finnish technology. These buildings are similar to our log houses. Why Vladimir is in favor of ecologically safe houses and who gives grants to environmentalists? Coming up next. Annually, about 20 million tons of carbon dioxide are emitted into the atmosphere. Scientists call it the main reason of global warming. Noxious emissions destroy the ozone layer, which smooths ultraviolet rays, which have a destructive effect on all living organisms. Thus, a fund was established with the purpose of solving global ecologic problems. The Global Environment Facility was created more than 20 years ago. It is the World Fund which accumulates money for its member countries in order to finance the implementation of environmental projects. The Global Environment Facility was established in 1992. It consists of 182 member countries. It performs its activities through the World Bank, the UN environmental and development programs. The facility cooperates with governments as well as with the private sector and non-governmental organizations. Nowadays, GEF is a major financing source of environmentalists. The Global Environment Facility works in 4 subject areas and helps countries to implement their projects. The main areas financed by the Global Environment Facility are the preservation of biodiversity, climate change, land degradation and problems of resistant organic contaminants. There are projects focused on the protection of multinational waters, groundwaters and water resource joint management. Vladimir is sure that ecological houses are not only a new trend, but a real advantage for environmental conservation. Indeed, these buildings are made of natural materials. Moreover, heating systems of such houses are also environmentally safe. Within the period of 5 to 7 years, we built approximately 100 houses. One such house is erected during 2 to 3 months. The demand for such houses is growing from year to year. People see that in such buildings it is even easier to breathe. We plan to expand the production. Thus, we want to construct the same amount of houses within 5 years instead of 10 years as it was before. How much oil is left in the interior of the Earth and what alternative sources are already efficient by this moment? Coming up next. In 1992, in Rio de Janeiro, it was decided to establish an international organization specializing in enhancing people's lives. Its principles had to be based on new approaches, ideas and methods which would answer up-to-date requirements. It marked the establishment of the Global Environment Facility. Primarily, the Global Environment Facility was established as an experimental program of the World Bank. But later, in 1994, more than 70 of its member countries decided to reorganize it and make a sort of a financial instrument for supporting and implementation of projects in different parts of the world. In the same 1992, the GEF Small Grants Program was established during the UN Conference on Environment and Development. Its main purpose was funding projects focused on restoring the environment and enhancing the quality of people's lives. The necessity and uniqueness of this program is that it is focused on civil society, or in other words, on local population. In fact, for ordinary people, it is very difficult to obtain funds by means of grant programs or donor organizations, especially when it concerns environmental protection and sustainable development. Mineral resources, which provide the world population with all amenities in the form of fuel, electricity, hot water and heat, are being exhausted year after year. Therefore, the international community does all efforts to shift on alternative renewable energy sources. Even now, numerous solar, wind and water power plants are being built in different parts of the world. For instance, in Denmark, 25% of electricity is generated from wind. In the meantime, solar electric stations are functioning in more than 80 countries around the world. Now the value of these projects reaches billions of dollars. They're supported by more than 160 countries. The GEF Small Grants Program actively supports projects focused on alternative energy sources. Sometimes financing reaches $50,000. Since the establishment of the facility, thousands of projects were implemented in the Middle East, Africa, Asia, the Pacific, Europe, South America and the Caribbean. There are a lot of grant organizations. However, they mainly assist large business companies. Receiving a grant for small farmers is very hard or almost impossible. And the uniqueness of this program is to make global resources available for local people. Despite the ongoing boom in the area of renewable energy, it is too early to speak about their global usage. Specialists say that, first of all, it is necessary to create very powerful infrastructures which would make it possible to transmit energy from one region to another. The need for energy accumulation systems is explained by the fact that solar energy can be produced only in daytime. Meanwhile, the peak of energy consumption is observed in evenings when people return from their work. Equal energy production and usage will require from households to install energy accumulating systems. The research of an energy agency shows that the development of alternative energy sources will allow to reduce the average global temperature by 2 degrees Celsius. Climate change is now a topical issue and everybody knows about the alternative energy sources. Those technologies which allow to reduce the emission of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere are of great importance for the entire world because climate affects all countries. People's involvement in preservation of the environment should not be limited by the private sector, considers Vladimir. Indeed, the complete transfer to green economy requires global usage of ecologically safe materials. We want to expand our business and construct ecological wooden houses not only in rural areas but in cities as well. In future, solar batteries will be installed on roofs instead of tiles and other things. A group of scientists from Global Footprint Network has calculated the annual maximum possible output of natural resources. Thus, within 7.5 months of this year, the world's population overpassed the critical point and goes over that limit. Experts affirm that currently humankind consumes 1.5 times more than the Earth is capable to give. Such avidity seriously damages the global ecosystem, which leads to the extinction of many plants and animals. All things considered, currently environmentalists embarked on the introduction of green projects focused on alternative energy sources. The European Commission forecasts that by 2020 almost 3 million workplaces will be created due to the development of the renewable energy sector. In Germany, for instance, about 300,000 people have jobs owing to renewable energy sources. Scientific developments, as well as basic and additional power engineering equipment, are underway. The popularity of so-called hybrid power generating plants in Kazakhstan is growing from year to year. It is explained by the sharp continental climate. The advantage of hybrid plants is that in summers wind blows along the ground and there is a lot of sunlight, while in winters the sun shines not so brightly but there is high wind. In such conditions, hybrid plants demonstrate their efficiency. It is especially important for villages located far from power lines and where their installation would cost a lot of money. The Small Grants program of the Global Environment Facility allows to test innovative approaches and methods in alternative power sector during projects' implementation. And as soon as their viability is proved, they will be introduced on a national basis. We plan to implement a project of the construction of a solar power plant near the town of Kapchagai with a capacity of 50 megawatt. Later, we plan to increase its capacity up to 100 megawatts. The government has created very favorable law and investment environment for the implementation of these projects. World energy consumption increased by 10% in the period between 1990 and 2010. Scientists predict that this figure can reach 55% within 15 years. Within the framework of Kazakhstan's transition to the green economy, it was planned that by 2020, 3% of energy in the country will be generated by renewable sources. However, experts affirm that these results have already been achieved. Besides that, Kazakhstan has a good potential for the development of its wind power sector. Experts have calculated that annually this source can provide the country with 900 million kilowatt-hours of energy. It is 8 times more in comparison with today's consumption level. There are 3 factors necessary for the successful development of renewable power sector. The first is economic. It is aimed at the reduction of energy cost. The second one implies the sufficiency of potential wind and solar energy in the region. And the third is the availability of regional or national power networks. A program aimed at the reduction of greenhouse gases is being implemented in Kazakhstan for 4 years. The works are expected to continue until 2020. The project implies assigning almost 7.5 billion tenge on the modernization of the housing and utilities sector. I think that the popularity of low-carbon and carbon-free economy sectors, in particular transport sector, will be only growing. 2014 was a record year in exploitation of renewable energy sources, concluded environment specialists of the UN. The energy output is equal to the power of all US nuclear reactors. The investment into alternative energy sources grew by 17%. Thus, investment into wind power sector reached historical maximum and made up $99.5 billion. Employees of the Mexican National Agricultural Institute use cactuses not only as the ingredient of the legendary beverage, but also as energy sources. The receipt of gas production is quite easy. A cactus cut into small pieces is mixed with dung and boiled in a pot. The efficiency is surprisingly high and reaches 625 cubic meters of gas from 1 ton of dry materials. It is equal to 930 kilowatt-hours of electricity. This formula allowed to reduce power consumption by 40%.